Well, hello and welcome once again to the DCL podcast, where we're inviting you to sit back, relax, and we'll be on our way shortly.
Welcome back to the DCL podcast, your podcast to help you cruise a little bit smarter. And today I am here with Christy. It's our favorite kind of episode because we get to play so much more when Steve is away.
I know, he always is like reining us in. We don't have to be reined in.
Yes, he's like a border collie and we're like his sheep. He's just sort of like nipping at us.
Sounds like a fuddy duddy. I don't know.
But I am so excited because I have yet to record an episode with our guests today. And I have always been so jealous because I am a consumer of what we're here to talk about today. So Erin, welcome. Welcome to the podcast, Erin Foster.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So Erin, you write, curate, edit the whole thing, right? Or do you have a team that works with you?
Well, there's definitely a team. So I am currently the lead author. It sort of switched maybe 4 or 5 years ago. So Len Testa, who is the guru of the touring plans website and the unofficial guides, he is my co-author at this point. I'm doing most of it. He does the money sections, but in addition to the two of us, we have an amazing editor, Richie Halfin, and then we rely on, all the people, all the agents, all the writers for the Touring Plans blog. Whenever they go on a cruise, I do pretty extensive interviews with them, and then I'm constantly reading cruise news and interviewing people that have been on cruises. And I was formerly on the Disney Parks Moms panel, which is now called Plan Disney. And there's, nearly 200 of us at this point. And whenever they go on cruises, we'll chat with them. So I'm now the lead author, but there's a big network of people that give me information and help contribute ideas and that sort of thing.
Amazing.
And I don't think you've mentioned the title and Chris talked around the title, but we are specifically referring to the Unofficial Guide to Disney Cruise Line, which is an actual publication that is updated yearly in book form, and you can get it on Kindle.
Digital, e-readers.
You can buy it at Amazon, you can buy it at Barnes & Noble online, and some of the larger Barnes & Noble stores carry it, physical copies. So I live in the New York area, and I've seen it on the shelf, which always gives me a little thrill,
For sure.
Amazing. Okay, so the Unofficial Guide, how many versions have there been so far? It's been going for a while, right?
We started doing it in 2014 was the first edition that came out. And I was just in the pre-chat telling y'all that I'm starting today to work on the 2024 edition. So usually I'll write it in the spring and summer. It gets edited in the late summer, early fall, and then it goes to the printer and yada, yada. And it comes out probably in late November, early December, that sort of thing. So, but it takes, 6 months of pretty steady work, which is beginning around now.
Right. And I imagine being a travel writer during the pandemic has been a whole vibe. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
The 2022 edition, years don't mean anything anymore, but we put out the 2020 edition. I'm looking at my shelf here. We put out the 2020 edition that came out right around Christmas of 2019. And then it was good literally for about 6 weeks. And then nothing happened and there was no cruising for over a year, yada, yada. And then when cruising came back, I wrote the 2022 edition. And literally I would cry every time there was a new announcement about some new procedure, some update to something, and so I was literally ripping it out on the daily of rewriting. So that was incredibly frustrating, but things seem to have settled down. So there is some information in the 2023 edition, the one that you can order on Amazon or Barnes & Noble right now, that is out of date. And we knew that would happen because we knew the pace of change was happening. So there are links in the book that you can follow where we have an online page with, we've updated with current information, but we made it pretty clear in the one that's out now that things are going to change, and they did change, but we've been able to update that online. And then I'm fingers crossed, so hopeful that the next one will be much more stable for the length of an entire year.
Right.
So hard. Let's start back in the beginning though. It's been a while since you've been on our show. We always love you. I think this is your third question mark.
Did we talk about the Wish? I don't remember.
I don't think we did. Okay. So we need to talk about the Wish, but before we even do that, let's talk about your Disney background. What have you in cruising background? Do you cruise other cruise lines? How often do you guys go to Disney? I mean, I kind of know the answer, but let's let our listeners know these things.
It's sort of embarrassing at this point that I have not been on other cruise lines. And Len Testa, obviously the co-author, he's on a Virgin cruise right as we're speaking right now. So he's been on Royal and Origin and Virgin and Holland. I mean, he's been on a lot. So, we do have that perspective. And obviously, there's so many people that I get information from that have been on lots of them. But I had booked a Royal cruise during the pandemic that got canceled, and I just haven't had an opportunity to rebook it yet. So that it will happen soon. As far as Disney World, I was part of the inaugural class of the Disney Parks Moms Panel, which is now called Plan Disney. I was selected for that in 2007 and served off and on from 2008 to 2014, answered, I think it was well over 10,000 guest questions. And I'm a DVC member. I get to the parks, to Disney World, probably broken up into various amounts of trips, but probably around a month a year I spend at Disney World. I try to go on at least, pre and post pandemic. I went on 4 Disney cruises last year. I've got 2 booked this year, but it'll probably turn into a couple more. So I'm pretty in the mix, and I've been on 10 Adventures by Disney trips, been to Hong Kong Disney, Disney Paris, Disneyland a couple times, although that's not my area of expertise. So, but I'm pretty dug into the world of Disney.
Well, my area of expertise is Disneyland. It's in my backyard. But that's amazing that you get to go to Disney World for a month out of the year. Do you still do things with the parks panel or?
We have an annual reunion that's, we pay for ourselves. And so I went in October and got to see everybody, but it's like a giant sorority at this point, although there are several gentlemen that are part of the panel. But I have not worked on the panel since about 2014. They have lots of rules about what you can and can't do. They were sort of a little wishy-washy at the beginning, but since I'm working for I get paid for the blog and the book, and they want us to not do that if you on the panel. So, but I see the people, and I'm in there, in the chat groups and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, we ran into each other at Geyser Point when you were here in October for your plan reunion. Yep. Just happened to both be eating there, hanging out there one night.
Wilderness Lodge is my DVC home resort, so I stay there pretty often.
And it's just the best restaurant. Listeners, if you have a chance, take a break from your day at the Magic Kingdom and go over, take the boat or the bus to Geyser Point, and it is just lovely.
So relaxing.
It's very relaxing. It's outside. So, maybe August is.
I was just about to say, Christy, I think you mean during the 6 months of the year that it is acceptable to eat outside in Florida.
But, in the evening,
it cools down.
It cools down. I mean, it's not really cool, right? But it's in the summer, in the evening, it is cooler, and you are able to eat outside comfortably.
They'll bring you frosty drinks to cool you down. Huh?
Yes. And Josh makes a very good frosty drink over at Geyser Point. So
long story short, you have a impressive Disney resume. You're well qualified to talk about all the things that you do talk about. But of course, we are the DCL podcast. So we're probably most interested in your takes on Disney Cruise Line. And so we thought it would be fun today to talk a little bit of just Disney Cruise Line, not gossip, but, opinions, thoughts, feelings. We'd love to hear what you have to say and maybe, share some of our thoughts with you as well. I think that would be fun. Let's dish. So I have been curious ever since I listened to the last episode you were on, Disney Wish. What do you think of the Disney Wish?
Okay, I've now been on the Wish twice, and my opinions changed a lot between the two trips. So the first trip I was on was the maiden voyage, and it was very overwhelming. It was like I knew a gazillion people, and so I was sort of, ended up talking to a lot of people, but I literally walked every deck of that ship maybe 4 or 5 times. Like I just did laps around the ship the whole time and wasn't so able to like enjoy. I was more like gathering information so I could verify stuff. And then the second time I went with some friends, a couple and their teenage daughter, and we just relaxed and had fun. And the vibe was very different. So like on the maiden voyage, it was, I'm going to throw out a number, but it was like 90% adults that were either, triple platinum, pearl, diamond, whatever level, or podcasters and bloggers and whatever. And it was a very sort of like charged environment, and the bars were overcrowded and the kids clubs were empty. And it was just like a sort of strange environment. And then when I went back, it was probably like 3 months later, it was fun. Do I love everything about it? No, I really, really can't stand that there's not a walking track. Like it hurts my bones about that.
Like literally.
Right. It's literally. That's one of the main things my husband and I love to do when we sail is to do laps on the track and, look at the ocean and talk about stuff. And it's like part of our vacation vibe. And the fact that you can't really do that on the Wish is just sad. But I liked the food. I thought the food at Marceline Market was great. I like the food on the pool deck a lot. The kids' spaces are so gorgeous. I spent a lot of time on my second trip on the Wish, chatting with the crew member, the cast members at the different kids clubs. I have the daughter of a friend is one of the staff in the Edge Club, and so I chatted with her for a long time about like the great things that they have going on in the Wish and pros and cons. The rooms are beautiful. It's stupid details. Like I love that there's a robe for everybody in the stateroom. Like some of that stuff is really nice. Great finishes, great, don't like that there's not a walking track.
The design team really knocked it out of the park with the Wish. Not designing the layout of the ship necessarily, not the lack of walking track, not maybe some of the dead ends or whatever, but the soft goods, right?
Right.
And the little details, the light fixtures. Oh my God, the light
aesthetic is gorgeous. Yeah.
Gorgeous. Yeah. Like walking down the hallway, you guys look up and look at the reflection in the light fixture that sort of matches what floor you're on or what else is happening. Right. It's amazing. It's amazing the detail they looked at. It's the walking track and a couple other things.
One other thing that I actually wrote a blog post about this on touringplans.com is I had very different experiences in the Arendelle restaurant each time. So the first time I just was randomly placed with my young adult daughter, and we were we were the seats next to the stage, and we're both big theater fans, and we love Frozen, and we do sing-alongs in the car and yada yada. And we had a fantastic experience being right next to the stage in the Arendelle restaurant. And then Chrissy Harrison, who is one of the Touring Plans parks researchers, who's a great reporter, she came back from her trip, not long after I went, and was like complaining about how awful Arendelle was. And I'm like, usually I very much respect her opinion, but I didn't get what was going on. And it turns out she was placed at like the far corner of the dining room and couldn't see anything. And I was like, well, it can't be that bad. And then when I went the second time, again, I tried not to make a request because I sort of like it when bad things happen. So I know what guests might experience. I was in the way, way back of the room, right next to the server staging area with like support beams in my way and couldn't hear anything. And the waiters were walking in front of me with dishes and, they were just doing their jobs. They weren't doing anything wrong, but it was an entirely different experience. So, and I don't feel like that's been an issue in any of the other restaurants on DCL that I can remember, where it matters so much where you're sitting. Maybe a little at Tiana's or the tangled one, Rapunzel's, but even there, it's not such of a big deal. But it was bad in Arundel, if you didn't have a good seat.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's interesting because that restaurant has so many moving parts. Like, I think the Olaf animatronic has had so many iterations because it is hard to master something like that when you're not going to have engineers and Imagineers and all those folks on every sailing if something goes wrong. I'm sure they have like an A version and a B version of the show without Olaf in it at all if something were to go wrong. Or I know they have had the like giant Olaf walk around the restaurant.
The first time I had the animatronic, and the second time I had the giant
walking,
talking Olaf. And I've read online, and I need to do a little more research about this before it goes into the book. But I've heard people say that they had no Olaf at all, which I don't even understand how they would do some of the vocal story and that sort of thing without the Olaf. But I'm gonna dig into that a little bit more.
Yeah, like over the years, I think Disney has learned if you're going to pride yourself on your storytelling, you have to have A, B, C, D plans for storytelling. And so, like, if you think about Navi River Journey, when that, like, the whole ride is built around that animatronic.
Right.
And then you come around the corner and it's a TV screen. That's kind of like a bummer.
Yeah.
But also the ride still operates and has a story to tell. And same thing with Rise of the Resistance. There's like 10 different versions of that ride whenever something goes wrong.
Yep.
So I think it makes sense that they'd have a bunch of versions. But to that point, if the story is operating with all components and it still doesn't feel like you're immersed or you're a part of it because you're sitting 40 or 50 yards away or 50 feet away.
With stuff in between that's distracting.
Yeah. So I would say that is a rough experience if you don't get those closer seats and you're further away. That being said, the talent of that cast is like so stellar. The song Show Yourself is like my anthem. And so I was like just full on crying in my dessert every night that we saw that show. I've been on the Wish twice, and so I've gotten to see the show twice. And I would say if I were comparing it to Tiana and Rapunzel, it would be my favorite of the three, but I never had the experience of being so far away from the stage that I couldn't see or hear everything. So I bet you're right. There's probably a big difference there.
Yeah, we were almost in the same section for both of our sailings.
Both times. So we were off to the side, but not too far. And every time we had, Anna, Elsa, and Olaf pass us by. So we were included in the space in a way. But speaking of the restaurant experiences, on our podcast, we're a huge fan of 1923. We think the food is really delicious there. Being able to get a quality filet mignon in like a basically rotational dining restaurant is pretty rare, and that's something we've all really enjoyed. There's a potato dish Christy and I will like just order extras of.
I'm trying to remember. There was a duck appetizer, and I was like, this is literally the best thing I've had in my many, many dozens of Disney cruises. Like that dish at 1923 was just delicious.
And their burrata, it's like huge and
a
amazing.
Giant ball of burrata, Like, what are they doing over there?
Sized, really. The potatoes, pro tip for your book, Erin, are the scallop potatoes that come from the lamb chop course, and they are so good.
Okay.
And so I highly recommend everybody swap out their filet mignon, just fine mashed potatoes, and have the amazing scallop potatoes, which can be made gluten-free for all of those that need it. They are naturally gluten-free. So
literally
obviously confirm in case there's any changes in the recipe, but so good. We ordered I feel like on one cruise, we had like 3 sides of those potatoes.
We were like, one for the beginning, middle, and end of the table, please. And then Christy and I just ate all of them.
Why are they like potato desserts? That sounds so good now. Like,
yeah, that's what it was, a savory, cheesy dessert. And a hot tip is the mashed potatoes they serve with the filet are just mashed potatoes. The cheesy potatoes that they serve with the lamb chop are like chef's kiss. So anyway, 1923. Also, the theming in there, that's so lovely. I'm into the like museum. Like, put me in the middle of a museum and let me eat. I would love to see your maquettes. I would love to hear, the story of whatever. So I'm like, that restaurant could stay. I don't mind if it's on every single one of the Triton class ships because they can just change out what's in those displays. Yeah. But I would be disappointed if they repeated Arendelle or Worlds of Marvel, because to me, those restaurants are amazing experiences, but not extremely repeatable.
Exactly.
And you do not want to go on another ship just to experience those things again. We haven't even talked about World of Marvel. Are you a Marvel fan? What are your thoughts?
I've seen I'm not rabid like some people, but yes, I am a Marvel fan and I've seen all the films. And I have to say, the second time through the Marvel experience, I was like, okay, I get it. I'm done. I sort of wish that it had been what they advertised initially, with more of the big food, little food, that sort of thing. I mean, it was cute, and who doesn't love Paul Rudd, but it's not super repeatable. I agree. Like, that would be the one where I would choose that for my Palo or Enchanté night if I had to,
That is precisely what I did.
The first time you go, you should do them all, but
when we repeated, I 100% during that meal zoned out. For the second time I was at Marvel. I did not hear like anything. People were pushing buttons. I did none of that because I just went to my happy place that didn't include Marvel and occasionally stared at Paul Rudd, and that was it. Because I definitely didn't need that in my life twice, but my kid adores it.
Well, that's what I was about to say, is that I imagine, I spent a little more time the second time I went, not paying attention to Paul Rudd, but paying attention to what was on all the screens the other time. And I imagine if you had a kid that was nervous about violence or guns or loud noises, it would be a sort of challenging environment. It was very loud, lots of explosions, lots of people shooting people. And some families don't really let their kids see a lot of that. It could be sort of shocking for a kid that's been a little sheltered or is nervous about fire even. There was lots of things like
exploding.
Yeah.
I could do without the like clips of Marvel movies.
Yeah.
I think like,
well, that's what
that's all it is. Like during your meal service it's like, let's call it 3 acts where there's like story that happens 3 times, and then it's all buffered by like trailers basically of Marvel action. And that's super distracting. I don't even, like, as a general rule, I don't even like to go to sports bars, not because I don't know literally anything about sports, but because I can't handle there being TVs in my peripheral vision all the time.
It's too much sensory stimulation.
It's all I want to look at. And if you have a kid who is with sensory needs, that restaurant may actually be prohibitive. It may be very difficult to take a child that has sensory needs there. So,
those noise canceling headphones.
Yeah, ear defenders and things like that. So it's definitely something to think about. It is, I would say I enjoyed it. I give it like a must do, but maybe not repeat sort of vibe.
Yeah.
And still my like hot tip is, if you can get a Palo or Enchanté reservation and you're on a 4-night, pick the pirate night because it's pretty much the same menu as the other ships. And do not miss the pirate fireworks on the Wish, because we loved that show, especially compared to Pirates in the Caribbean show that's on the other ships. The Wish is like 25 steps above, and we really loved that show.
The live band and everything.
Yeah, live band and Red just like doing her thing. Good storytelling. Also, the fireworks are just ever so slightly more impressive when they're going off to live music. Yeah, that would be our restaurant recommendation. Did you eat it Enchanté or Palo?
I ate at Palo. I did not have a chance to eat at Enchanté. So reasons.
But you've probably spoken to people who've eaten there.
Lots of people, yeah.
Well, we'll start with Palo because we've all eaten there. How do you think Palo Steakhouse compares to the other ships?
Pretty equivalent. I don't think it's a huge step forward. I don't know. What did y'all think?
Our experience is slightly, what is the word? Like,
we have rose-colored glasses
yes.
because the best meal we ever had on a Disney ship and happened at Palo on the Wish, but probably 50% of that was the company.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I was going to say, did you have a great server or a great people?
We had the best time together. It was like, 10 adults. Our kids were all gone, and we had the private dining room.
Oh,
and
okay.
So we basically had it, and we had it for 5 hours. We were just literally having a 5-hour dinner with friends that we never get to see in person. So everything was slightly...
Oh, that sounds really special for lots of reasons.
Yeah. Like we were basically like on cloud nine. And so I think we left it being like, this is the best in the whole fleet. But I'm like, was the food very different? I don't know. Probably not markedly different. I just went on the Wonder and ate at Palo, and the sides were the same. Slightly different options on the cuts of meat. Like the Wish offers Wagyu.
Right.
Which in our private dining room experience, I don't think was that great, but I have seen the cut is a little bit better since the July sailing, which is better. So if you're getting the Wagyu, I think the experience for those people will be better than what we even had back in July.
I'm not such a huge red meat eater, so that's probably part of why I was like, it's the same,
Right. But, Palo and the Rose.
Yeah, the Rose. It's a beautiful space. It's prettier. I was on the Magic in October, maybe like 2 weeks before I went on the Wish the second time. And, the Wish is just a much, much lovelier room. So.
Right. Yeah. And so then I know none of us have eaten there, but what are you hearing about Enchanté?
People are intimidated by Enchanté. Did you guys walk through? I walked through a couple times, and it's very people that my impression, it was more like a salon than a restaurant. It's so white. I was like afraid if I had a glass of red wine and spilled a drop, but somebody would come and scold me, or the stepmother would be like, clean your space. I don't know. But it's the same. I've been to Victoria and Albert's maybe 7 or 8 times, and I've been to Remy several times. I'm actually going on the Dream again next weekend, and I have a Remy dinner and a Remy dessert. So, again, I'm going to have that. But I think if you're not used to fine dining, like really fine dining, I think a lot of people are intimidated by Enchanté and also by Remy or Victoria and Albert's. People who are used to that sort of food, I think, have enjoy it. But if that's not in your wheelhouse, I think a lot of people are sort of freaked out by it.
But you did mention a good gateway to that, which is the dessert experience.
Right.
I have done the Remy dessert experience twice and would do it again. Like, it sounds sort of baffling to eat 6 desserts at 3:00 on a Sunday, like in a row. But honestly, they are so good and so wildly different from each other that you're just sort of like, what is this thing that is being brought to me? And why does it taste like heaven? So I think if you're nervous about I don't want to go to Enchanté because I don't want to accidentally eat a snail and not know that I was about to or something. It's like, okay, I hear that.
Dessert or that even brunch is a smaller meal than the...
Right. That's a good point. Brunch is usually more approachable because there's some universal dishes that are like, an egg is an egg.
An egg is an egg, yes.
Yeah.
I would be curious how those meals work with gluten-free. And obviously dinner would work, but then also I don't eat seafood. So that's just, I feel like so limiting, but even the dessert experience and the brunch. So Erin, if you could do some research and put, update that in the book, I would love that.
Sure. Yeah.
So this is why we have Erin on, so we can make requests for what's in the book.
Len Testa, my co-author, his partner Laurel is tends toward vegan. Like, I mean, she makes some small exceptions, and she's basically like, it's impossible to eat at Remy or Enchanté as a vegan. Like they just, I mean, I'm sure you could go and they would put food in front of you, but it's not the same sort of experience. And nor would you want to pay that amount of money for that,
Right. So that's what I'm curious about, even for myself. So good research.
Okay.
Well, and maybe it's changed because this seems sort of like an unpopular thing, Christy, but when we went to the dessert party, we were specifically told, because I have a banana allergy, we were specifically told that
horrifying.
If there was a dish that had bananas, they would not serve it to me, and they could guarantee that it wouldn't have cross-contamination with the other dishes. However, they would not replace it.
Oh,
and so they were like, if there are, dietary restrictions, we do not give a different dessert in its place.
But they give you two of something else? Did you ask?
Well, it didn't happen to me, but because Christy has like celiac on my mind, even though I am not celiac, I'm always like, Christy gets a text from me at least once a week of a random gluten-free thing I saw in the grocery store, because I literally just am like, this is how I can relate. And Christy always just politely says, thank you, and then moves on.
But I'm always so appreciative of when people think of me, especially.
Well, you probably subscribe to like every gluten newsletter on the planet and you already know or whatever, but it's nice to be.
I mean, Christy literally had 800 adults send her pictures of gluten-free Oreos when those came out, because every single adult was like, look, you can try something that is core foundations to our identities, like an Oreo. But anyway, my point is, I found that fascinating, because it's not how Disney typically approaches these sorts of things. But these desserts, some of them, and you've done the experience, some of them, they tell you take like 4 days to make. Because they're using like gastronomy and we dipped it in calcified water and like whatever.
They massaged the strawberry and picked out all the little seeds on the outside and then they caramelized it and put it in a cloud of
puff
foam or
smoke.
something.
So it's like that I get, you can't just be like, don't worry, 4 days ago we made you a gluten-free version of this as well. But I do think that's an interesting way to navigate dietary restrictions, especially when people are booking this far in advance a lot of times and they're stating their dietary restrictions ahead of time. But I'm not a pastry chef. I don't know what it's like to make these things that look like lemons that are not lemons. But, it's just a fun fact for those, or not even a fun fact, a fact for folks is that what happened, at least on my sailing, is we were told no accommodations can be made. All we would do is pull it out of your rotation.
And you had that at Remy, but not at Palo?
I've not been to Enchanté, and it didn't happen at Palo because there weren't bananas on the menu. Also, at Palo, Christy, is a souffle naturally gluten-free?
No, but they can make it
gluten-free. Right. So they do make substitutions at Palo.
Right.
But these desserts, I think it's literally because they're making just like 40 of them, and they're making them 4 days in advance because they take forever to make. That's why they're like, we can't
special ingredients or whatever.
Yeah. And a lot of times they'll be like, we got this chocolate from the slopes of Mount Olympus. And you're like, okay.
It was chewed on by a bat and excreted, and now it's on your
swallows spit, and it's like, okay, thank you for the experience, or like, this is literal gold that you're about to swallow. So it's a beautiful experience, but dietary restrictions in those fancy restaurants can be challenging. That's all we're saying. Okay, let's talk about entertainment. There's a bunch of entertainment on the Wish, and we're curious what you think of the main theater shows. So we could start with Seize the Adventure, the opening night show. What do you think of that one?
I was talking to y'all before. I am a big theater person. I live in the suburbs of New York, and I see, I think the
best theater in the world.
I see the theater in the world. I think last year I saw approximately 80 live productions of various sorts in New York City. So I am not the best judge. I don't love, I mean, I'm going to say this and sound like the real jerk, like really overprivileged jerk. I don't love any of them. I think they're done well. I think many of the cast members are very talented people. And I have learned a lot about the technology that goes into putting on those shows. It's at sea, it's absolutely incredible what they can do. I am in awe of the performers and the technology. I'm used to seeing, the 2.5 hour version of Aladdin with all of the sets and the costumes, and you just can't do that in 45 minutes on an ocean liner. So I am very, very respectful of the people who don't get to have professional theater experiences all the time like I do, and adore those shows. That said, the Frozen ones on the ships, I think, are really well done. I love the effects and the lighting and the fake snow. I think Disney sometimes tends to overdo it with like the things falling from the ceiling, like the confetti cannon and the bubbles and the fake snow. And again, it's because I'm jaded, because I've gone on dozens of cruises and I go to the parks all the time. Like, I can almost sort of go, when the Treasure comes out, the ship that's coming out in a year or so, I can be like, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's where the confetti cannon's going to be, that sort of thing. So I don't even remember what you asked.
We were asking just generally what you think of the shows. I think you and I are really similar in this specific area. And I'll tell you the thing that I look forward to in these shows is the music arrangements and how weird and odd and delightful they can be. Like, I'm trying to think of the exact mashup that they do in Seize the Adventure that just makes no sense and from a musical perspective, and yet your brain is just like hungry for more of it when they do like Moana and Hercules and
Brave.
And Brave. Yeah, like these are just not things that you hear together, and they're being layered in these sort of weird, almost honestly off-putting, and then your brain clicks it and you're like, that sounds so cool. Yeah. That stuff, I'm like, that's really exciting to me. And it has nothing to do with anything other than the creative choices made when they were orchestrating the show. And so those sorts of things I get really excited about. There is a fireworks show at Disneyland right now celebrating the 100th anniversary of the Walt Disney Company that is maybe the best fireworks show that Disneyland has had since Remember Dreams Come True. Like, easily one of the most thrilling fireworks shows I have seen at Disneyland since the 50th anniversary fireworks show. The reason it's so thrilling is because they put together the weirdest music, and it makes your brain just so hungry to see where the orchestrations are going to go next. That is something that I think is an exciting part of Disney Cruise Line shows, that they do just like really weird combinations of things that are fun. That's where I would go.
Yeah, I love to look at the technology. How are they moving this set? How are they lighting these people? How are they keeping the actors safe in this environment? So, I think the technical aspects of it are incredibly fascinating also.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I can't ever not mention this, my biggest pet peeve is like 30-year-old, 5-foot tall women playing 12-year-olds. And the older ships rely heavily on that construct, like Annabelle. They don't really do that on The Wish. So that's like a chef's kiss to me. I'm like, let's put more of these like Goofy wants to be a captain stories, because then we don't have to hear a 30-year-old woman who's a 12-year-old starting junior high tomorrow. Or
I'm like, is it Dreams where the girl's on the bed and and like she's always like, I'm 40 and I'm like bumping up into perimenopause and but mom, don't take my iPad away. I have Peter Pan's coming.
Yes, exactly. That show is the exact show I am talking about. And even in Frozen, they choose a really nice construct, which is to have the younger Anna and Elsa be puppets. And I'm like, yes, more of that. Less of the adults playing kids. more of the puppets and the talking heads and the whole thing. That's my jam. And I think they're doing more of that here. I think the entire DCL community rolled their eyes and was sad when they were like, Aladdin is coming to the Disney Wish, because everyone was like, excuse me, what?
And won't Aladdin now go to the treasure? Like,
because that's the lobby statue.
The Aladdin statues in the lobby or whatever. I think that was just, none of it makes sense. Make a wish, the genie, the wish, like.
Right. So I think there is a bit of a feeling of recycled, and part of you gets it because these shows are actually very difficult to stage.
Absolutely.
And it costs a lot of money to write 45 to 1 hour long versions of these shows and to produce them in the, as you stated, very specific constraints of a cruise ship. But I would tend to agree that the entertainment on The Wish, for me, tended towards safe. Like it tended towards like not huge choices being made.
But maybe that was pandemic driven.
Could be.
Possibly. I will say the second time I was on The Wish, there was an African-American Elsa, which I thought was a really progressive and great of them. And she was fantastic. So, I give Disney props for things like that.
The touring production of Frozen, and I believe they tried to do this on Broadway. I don't know how it played out or if they ever got the opportunity.
I saw the Broadway one, yeah.
So I did too, but specifically this touring production, I just took my kiddo to it. And the young Elsa was like maybe an age appropriate, probably 10, 11, 12-year-old young Black actress. And then the older Elsa was white, and they were just like, it's colorblind cast. It doesn't matter.
I had a similar experience. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that when they do stuff like that, it allows representation to feel authentic. And I get really excited about that. I also think on cruise ships, you have to like quadruple cast, especially in the days of COVID, where you're like, we might be having half the cast out next week. Okay, so we got to figure out. The
captain might be putting on some tap shoes or whatever.
Yeah. We might be having the captain playing Elsa this week, but I think in general, you're right. The feat for me is not, I think it can feel a little eye-rolly when they're like Broadway caliber shows at sea, because it's like, if you've seen a Broadway show, you know that the caliber is so beyond what I think folks really can conceptualize a show could be, from the talent and the acting and all of that. But live orchestrations change absolutely everything. Yeah. And, those actors on Broadway are being paid quite a bit of money and the quality of talent that it attracts is slightly different. And so when they say Broadway caliber, I think for me, I tend to agree with you that the best thing is the like technical skill that it takes to do this at sea.
Absolutely.
is exciting and fun to see.
In addition to being jaded because I see a lot of theater in New York, I'm also jaded because I've seen many of these shows many times. And so they, I don't love when people ask me this question, because I know that I'm not representative of the general population who's going and experiencing these things. And the cast is great. And there are many examples, which I'm obviously not pulling out of my head right now, but where people have made the transition from cruise ships to off-Broadway or Broadway. So
you can think of the most famous one, which is Jennifer Hudson.
Jennifer Hudson, right.
But you're right. Okay, well, cool. Love that for us. We love the shows, but there's always a grain of salt. Yeah. We would be remiss not to ask you what you think might come with the treasure.
What a good question. I don't know. There's a Hercules that's going on off Broadway right now in New Jersey that is hopefully coming to Broadway in a year. I mean, that's the rumor. And I would love to see some Hercules on a ship. That would be fun. But I don't know. I mean, what was just announced the other day? The Rogers, was that yesterday? The Rogers
the musical coming
some
to
of that,
period.
man, Who knows?
I don't even know what you're speaking of.
Yeah, no, Chrissy, it would take you too long to catch you up, but the listeners know. Um, Rogers the Musical is coming to the Hyperion at California Adventure this summer. Super exciting. It's also very close in proximity to Avengers Campus, so from a theming standpoint, it makes sense. Yeah. Okay, so who knows what shows they might bring. At D23, they teased different theming components of the ship by like having a flyby, and in the different portholes there were like ghosts from Haunted Mansion, and I want to say Moana was there, and Coco. If those are indicators of theming, which why would they put them in that if there weren't indicators of theming? I think that if those are the three things we're talking about, I want a Moana stage show, I want a Coco restaurant, and I want a Haunted Mansion bar. Those would be like my go-tos based on the like things that they teased. Moana as a stage show on Disney Cruise Line feels so like a no-brainer that I'm just like, why haven't we done that yet? And then if we're talking about Coco, the food is such a big part of Coco.
Right.
I think that Mexican food is also a fairly accessible sort of broad category of food that folks on a cruise ship would enjoy.
Right.
And you could do fun things with it. So that's where my head's at with that one. I think that would be fun. They might have also teased Maribel. And did they, Christy? Was there like a Encanto? Because Encanto would also make a great musical or a great restaurant, especially
because
Encanto
is coming to the New York stage.
I would love Encanto on Broadway.
I'm gonna
Encanto's
Google
one of
and
my
send you a
favorites.
link if I find it, but I feel like I read that somewhere.
Okay. Well, anyway, Treasure, some people in the Disney community are complaining that the concept art looks dark and sort of like more claustrophobic, but what is your opinion on heavily themed decor like that, where it's like Adventureland on a ship?
I was very conflicted about the heavy theming on the Wish, that, every space has a theme, as opposed to like the Skyline bar that's on the Dream and the Fantasy, where it's just, that's a theme, obviously, but it's not a Disney theme. It feels like on the Wish, there's less to do, or less safe space for people who are not like Disney, 24/7. I guess that's how maybe they're trying to differentiate themselves from some of the other lines, is that they can use their IPs. It'll be interesting to see. And I'll also be interested to see the length of the sailings on the Treasure. It was very different on the Wish going on the 5-night maiden voyage versus a 3-night just regular cruise. It was, again, a different vibe, made you wanting more on the 3-night, whereas on the 5-night you were like, maybe that's enough. And so I'm wondering if the Treasure is going to be doing sort of 7-night things. Will there be enough ways to differentiate? Because when you're doing the same restaurant for several nights in a row, like, can they mix it up a little? How does it feel different? I think I mentioned that I was on the Magic this past October, just a few months ago, and we had the Rapunzel restaurant a couple times, and they did a show both times that was quite similar, both mentioning Rapunzel's birthday, like 2 nights apart. And it was like, why am I doing this? That sort of thing. We were joking with our waiter about it. He's like, it's always your birthday. It's your unbirthday, that sort of thing. So, we'll see what the execution is.
Yeah, it's a struggle, especially on longer cruises too. And the struggle for dining times, because when you're with little kids, you sometimes accept it as kind of loud, like we talked about earlier, but you sometimes that entertainment is helpful for the little kids, gives them something to look at. But if you're with a big group of people, or even you're grown-ups with your own people, you want to have a conversation at dinner. And if the show takes up the whole dinner, then you're unable to have that conversation. So it's a struggle. Like, what do they do? How do they toe that line between entertainment for the families, maybe with the younger kids, but also an enjoyable experience for everybody?
One of the things that's relatively new, which you guys have probably talked about, is the ability to online make preference requests for the dining rooms, which, you could previously sometimes have an agent call in and make a request. But in addition to, say, eating at your own table versus with strangers, there is now an option to select online. Do you want to be in the middle of the action, or do you want to have a quieter space? And it's hard if you have different ages in your group, but if you are, say, just, a group of adults, you can select, I want to have a quieter space, and hopefully they'll put you, not so much in the loud zone.
And they will try to accommodate you. And it's always a request, is what, we have to remember with Disney Cruise Line. Yeah, that is a good point as well. So let's stick with your book for a minute, or go back to your book for a minute. So the 2023 version had just come out. You are starting to write 2024.
Right.
As you're starting to write 2024 already, what might be different? Do you
Well, the different stuff is obviously updating all the COVID protocols, because that's all changed, and hopefully getting a lot more information about the Lighthouse Point new private island. We're trying to dig into that to get some more real details on that. We'll obviously be trying to get more real details on the treasure, although, who knows?
Disney is so tight-lipped with all of that stuff.
Yeah.
All these other companies, even I think of Celebrity, and Celebrity is we're going to make the captains and the ships and the new experiences something to let you be excited about, versus Disney that's look, we are going to ride on our laurels and you are just going to like it because you always have, or we're telling you to, instead of releasing this information that can let us be excited about it.
They do it slowly. That is true.
They do it slowly. And I'm now, because it was 10 years between the dream and the fantasy, and now this new, era of ships, I'd sort of forgotten how much they get wrong in their press releases. So there was a lot that they promised, or they hyped for the Wish, that didn't exactly come out the way that it happened. So this time through, I'm going to be taking it with several more grains of salt about what they're promising when they come out with the treasure. As they start to release the dribs and drabs of information, as the booking date gets closer, really going to try to be looking at it with a more exacting eye. Oh, do you think this will come out the way they're saying it's going to come out?
Yeah.
Do you all have a theory of when you think the first sailings on the treasure will be? Based upon, it's a theory, right? It's just
I'm hearing fall of 24, but who knows, what have you guys heard? Yeah.
I think that fall or even winter, I think they're going to want to be conservative this time around because of what happened last time.
Yeah.
And to give everybody 50% off, and I enjoyed my 50% off because I was one of them that had a canceled sailing, and now I get to go to Alaska this summer as a result. Thanks, Disney.
Yep.
But that's not something I feel like they're going to want to keep doing.
No, that was probably an intense decision to make, but they also realized that when you cancel the first 10 sailings or whatever on a brand new ship, you're canceling your biggest fans. Those are the people who would have booked that sailing, is the people who are sailed on Disney and they're all platinum and they're all really excited. And so they did that probably for that reason. I'm not saying that the other cruise lines don't have loyal followings. Obviously, they all have their loyalty clubs, and there are different types of people who are fans of different cruise lines and so on. But Disney does tend to attract people who are fans of Disney as a product, but have not ever cruised before. They're oh, I want to try this thing and I trust Disney.
Right.
And so that makes me think that the treasure is going to be more conservative, because it's one thing to cancel on your biggest fans and give them something really cool, but it's another thing to do it twice in a row. And so I think this next time they'll say, this is the drop dead date, the last date that we're going to be able to do it, and still be true that it's coming out in 2024. Also, I will say, I bet you Lighthouse Point's timeline is somewhat dependent on the release of the treasure, meaning it will be very hard to have that number of ships and continue Castaway Cay as your only private destination.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think they're going to be trying to time the two similarly. And Lighthouse Point, let's be real, is an investment in every other ship. Because people will be like, I want to go to Lighthouse Point. I don't care if I'm on the Treasure. I'll get on the Wish, or I'll get on the Wonder.
Yeah,
as long
the
as
Magic and the Wonder, right?
Yeah, as long as it takes me to this new destination, I'll sail on whatever ship it is. And we, normally, I don't know how long it was after the Dream and the Fantasy, but do you remember that giant documentary they made about basically remodeling the Magic after they released the Dream? They were like, essentially, here's an hour-long documentary where we show you that we closed our ship for 6 weeks or 4 weeks, and we rebuilt it from the top up on the inside, and we did all this stuff to make it a brand new experience. You have to think that something like that must be in their minds, because if the product is so different from the Magic all the way to the Treasure, they're going to want to have refreshed spaces that pull people.
Some speculation that the Magic and the Wonder might be, quote unquote, put out to sea, in the not so distant future. They're 25 years old now, and that's off, 25 to 30 years is often the time when a ship will be sold to a smaller line or decommissioned or something like that. So that's another thing that we're going to be digging into. Is there any breadcrumbs of knowledge about any of those things happening?
And as you say that, 1,000 screams across the country from people who vehemently hate every other class of ship except for
I love them. I do. I find that I like the smaller ships. I like that when they dock at Castaway Cay, Castaway Cay's less crowded. I like how you get to know the cast members more intimately. There was a couple of years in a row where I did very long summers on the Magic, and some of those crew were there for multiple contracts, and I would see them and they're like, hey, you're back, and I'm like, oh gosh, it's so good to see you. I love that sort of vibe on the smaller ships in a way that I never got when say the Dream was doing the 3 and 4 nights just over and over again. It was more like a factory, whereas the Magic and the Wonder were more like a family.
Well, and if the Magic and the Wonder go away, in defense of Disney, it's not like Disney's just like arbitrarily picking a date and being like, these things need to go. The ocean is very hard on metal and on things that have motors and engines and mechanisms for movement. And there literally is an expiration date on these things. And when we sailed on the Wonder, there's an episode about it, but when we sailed on the Wonder for the first time, we had an aft room. And the vibrations were, I could not state how soul-shattering the sound of our stateroom was. Like we laid in bed for 5 hours just staring at the ceiling before we had to call down and be like, hi, we would like to sleep on our vacation. What can we do? And it turned out literally they had been dealing with this for months. And the itinerary was that it was sailing from San Diego all the way to Cabo. And so to get there in 30 hours or however long they had to book it. And so literally, if the Wonder wants to be able to sail at capacity, their only option is to sail slower. Otherwise, you will have 25% of your passengers not sleeping at all and complaining to you that they don't want to sail again. And that is not the same issue on the Dream, the Fantasy, or the Wish. And so I would just point out that these ships do age in such a way that the engineering to fix those problems is probably going to cost more than just starting over.
Yeah.
Hopefully not right now. I get it, people. I love those old ships.
I mean, I haven't heard of any dates at all. But it's just from a historical perspective of cruising in general,
Yeah.
So who would you think that the unofficial guide is for? I mean, everybody, right? So that we can sell all the books.
It's I occasionally will go look at our Amazon ratings, don't read the comments, but you look at the comments. We got one rating that was like, most of the ratings are quite good, but one that was not great. Like, I have sailed 1 million times and this is for like newbies. And it's like, well, yeah, it kind of is for newbies. Like, who is it for? It's for somebody who is relatively new to cruising or relatively new to Disney. There's a lot of, this is procedural stuff, how to do things. And I read a lot of online chat groups about cruising and Disney cruising, and people in their first 1 or 2 or 3 cruises are nervous. They're really nervous. And that's a lot of what the book is for. Like, they don't know. God, I mean, the number of threads I've read about what do I wear? It's like somebody has seen the Love Boat and the glamorous gowns, and they think, I'll never measure up to Charo in her sequin bustier or whatever. And it's like, it's really just hold their hand, take it down a notch. Like, it's going to be okay. Or they've been to the Disney parks, particularly Disney World, where it's like, plan. You've got to go. And no, this is a little bit different. And your experience won't be ruined if you don't get a cabana, because nobody's getting a cabana, or they're just nervous. Like, for many people, the Disney cruise is their first cruise and they just don't know what to expect. So we're here to demystify all of the things that would be, I don't know what to eat. I don't know how to behave. I don't know what documents I need. I don't know where to go. I don't know what kind of stateroom to choose. I don't know what a veranda is. I don't know what a crew member is. I don't know anything. How much is it going to cost? I don't know how to tip. I don't know what to, so it's for people who are nervous, who are planning their first trip or thinking about planning their first trip to see if it's right for them. And then if you've been on a couple or you're trying one of the other ships, it's great to sort of check in. Oh, what's different about the Magic versus the Wish versus the Fantasy?
Right. We also have to plug that you tirelessly update live, right? So people who purchase the book have access to live updates when information changes. And that's really rare to be able to purchase a tourist book that then is also going to be updated, as quickly as possible. Obviously, our disclaimer is always check the know before you go section, because Disney will sometimes change things like the week before you're sailing, especially during COVID. But in general, you're pretty up to date as long as people know there's like essentially an appendix or a
right. In the book, there's a little thing like check our update page. And for this book, we've made some notes there, but for the previous one where Disney was still in the middle of COVID, I was updating that sometimes twice a week of Disney has changed this policy or whatever. So there is a link in the book where you can go to a page that is updated quite regularly of procedural things that have changed.
And I also think the book is, unlike the guy who said I've been on a million cruises, there are still some of us who've been on a million cruises and like it because we like to just see, is there a morsel of information in the book that's just a tiny bit different? And there is, and there's always going to be something. It's just fun to read about it. And it really can be for everybody, but knowing that a large part of the book in the beginning is the planning stuff, which is so important. Not everybody's going to need that part, but that's okay too. And I like how you talk about ports in the back of the book. So I think that's really helpful, especially if somebody's going to a new port for the first time. There's just so much good information in here.
I mean, even if you've been a zillion times, there might be something. Sometimes people ask me, like, what's the difference between, say, somebody's been on 10 cruises versus me being on 10 cruises, or, pick a number. And it's that when you go on your cruise, you're doing the things that interest you or the things that are right for your family. Whereas I'm going and I go with different groups of people. I'll go with my elderly parents. I'll go with, my friend who has a toddler or whatever. And I do an incredible amount of research beyond just going on my own vacation. So I speak to people who have had good experiences, bad experiences. I speak to a wide variety of travel agents. I speak to a wide variety of vacationers. And when I go, I'm not doing things. I mean, I do things that I enjoy, but I'm not doing things for myself. I'm going to do research. So I mentioned that when I went on the Wish for the first time, I literally walked every deck 4 or 5 times, taking notes, taking pictures, noticing things like the light fixtures and where do the themes end, and documenting the laundry room. How does this work? Does it really go the way it says it goes? Can you peek into Enchanté if you're not dining there? So we're doing a lot beyond what you would do on your own vacation. So I do so much research beyond what you might have done if you just go on a cruise yourself, that sort of thing.
I think there's also one other type of person that it would be really good for. And I'm that type of person, which is that maybe even better than the vacation itself is planning it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think not everyone's like that. But I'm the type of person who my mental health is better if I just have a vacation on the horizon. It's like while I'm actually on the vacation, I'm like a little bit too stressed to have fun. But the planning of it and the anticipation of it is like a little pool of dopamine that I can go to, when I'm having a bad day. And so
real research.
These sorts of books, these sorts of books are, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I doubt there's probably a ton of info in it that I have never heard before. And that's not why I would necessarily read it. I would read it because it hypes the vacation. It makes me excited for the thing. And so I think if you're that type of person, these sorts of books are just fun to read at 10 o'clock at night when you can't sleep and you're excited about your vacation that's in 6 months.
Or if it's a reference, you want to remember something like, oh, where was that thing that I saw? Oh, that.
Yep, exactly. So just plugging it for that reason too, everyone. I think, and if you're a listener to a podcast about Disney Cruise Line, you're probably one of the people who likes...
You're probably good with the book too.
You like to dream and imagine and think about vacations. So just saying, this is our chance to dream and imagine and think. And even if it's fun to poke fun at Disney for the things they don't do well, we wouldn't invest this much time in this product if we didn't just love it. So that's my plug for you. I think it's great.
Well, thank you, Erin, for coming on today. Is there anything else that you think we should include in this episode?
I don't know. Looking forward to the treasure. Oh, we haven't talked about the random new giant ship, which I don't know.
Oh, the dream, or it's not the dream, but it used to be called the Dream when it was being built.
The floating, I don't know what it is.
City.
I don't really know anything about it. It's going to probably go to Asia and I'll never get on it because it'll live in China and I don't know.
For those of you who don't know, there was a ship called the Global Dream. And it was from a cruise line that went bankrupt during the pandemic. But they spent $1.5 billion to build this ship, and it was 90% complete or something like that. And then I
think maybe like 70, but it was a lot's complete,
Yeah, the metal was all there.
Yeah.
And then they went bankrupt. And so Disney bought it for literally pennies on the dollar. Disney got an extremely good deal. Actually, I feel like on an earnings call recently, they said that they said a dollar amount for how much they're investing into it's something like 500 million, or it's a large investment, everyone, to upgrade this ship. But it seems fairly clear to everyone in the community that it's not going to sail in the US. At least that's their hope, is not to have it sail here.
And it's got some sort of fuel that has to be over there.
Or they have to do barging like they do here with liquefied natural gas. But the point is, it's a massive ship and they're making it look like their ships, i.e. they're painting it in the classic Disney ocean liner look. But the interior, they can't just move everything around, right? Some of these walls were already built.
Right. I'm sure they'll have Disney shows and Disney characters, but my guess is they might have something like casinos to appeal to a different environment, a different audience. So I have a feeling it will not translate to the US Disney crowd quite so well, and it won't be particularly accessible to US residents.
Right. Now, there are famous examples of cruise lines building cruise ships for the Asian market that don't do well, and then they transfer them to America. So Norwegian has done this, for example. And what they do is during that transfer period, they take out all the things that an American audience would not really appreciate. I want to say the Norwegian Joy is an example of this, where it had like 3 or 4 different tea rooms. And they pulled out all those things because that's not a particularly American construct. And, you know, they revamped the inside, renamed the restaurants, redid some of the decor. So it'll be interesting what Disney does. And Disney's made it clear they're willing to make big changes for international theme parks that are culturally focused, right? You know, Shanghai has a very different vibe than the other parks.
Or even it was shocking when they had wine at Disney Paris at the beginning, you know, or
right. So anyway, it's an interesting thing. You know, would I be remiss not to sail on it because I want my like triple grand slam or whatever we'll call it? Sure. But would it be like my top priority? Probably not. I think, you know, if there were an opportunity to sail on it, I would be excited to do it.
We'll peer pressure each other to go.
We'll peer pressure for the book.
Yeah.
It's for research.
It's for research. It's a research trip.
Well, thank you, Erin. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your insights. Thank you for continuing to publish this book every year and give us that little bit of Disney when we are not on a ship. And why don't you let our listeners know where they can find you?
You can find my book, The Unofficial Guide to Disney Cruise Line, on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and at larger bookstores. It's available in print and in electronic, like Kindle versions. I'm a regular contributor to the blog at touringplans.com, and I'm Ms. Erin Foster on Twitter, and I don't even know what my name is on Instagram, but you can hunt me down, you know.
That's great. Thank you so much again for coming on. To our listeners, go out and get yourself a copy. And I guess, is that all, Chris? Do we have anything else?
Yeah, I can't wait to do it again for 2024.
You guys are the best.
We'll have you on. We'll have you on again to plug the 2024 edition and to talk about whatever announcements they finally make for the treasure. That'll be a fun gossip session.
For sure. Okay, thanks for listening, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye.
Namaste.
The DCL podcast is not affiliated with the Disney Cruise Line, Walt Disney Company, Adventures by Disney, or Run Disney. All of the opinions expressed on our shows are those of the hosts and the guests who appear on the show. If you have any questions about any of these products, please contact the Walt Disney Company.